Right, we're just about to start. All right, hello everyone. Hello. Welcome. How is everyone doing tonight? Make sure you tap the screen, share the live. We've got some great subjects to go over tonight. Hello, welcome. Welcome. All right, so today, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to talk about alignment and how that ends up affecting our happiness. And for those of you who are first joining me, and this is your first time, my name is Tina. I am a happiness coach, and I help people who are in a dark place move to a happier place. I do this by sharing my experience, strength, and hope of what I've been through. And these are tools I use on a daily basis, sometimes hourly. But these are tools that I use regularly to be able to keep myself in a happier place and navigate some of the challenges that come with life, whether that is from past trauma, you're experiencing depression, anxiety, dark suicidal type thoughts. I've had all of them and I've been able to work through them, and I am still here today feeling better than ever. So today I want to talk about alignment, self-respect, hate, forgiveness, acceptance. We're going to cover all of those things and kind of go into each one of those topics as a deep dive. So one of the things that I had learned a long time ago was this concept of being in alignment with who we truly are. Did I spell that wrong? I did. Oh, hang on. I'm all twitchy now. Alignment. All right. All right, there we go. So, first mistake of the live. There we go. So, living in alignment. The fastest way to be unhappy is to live out of alignment with your values. So, it's important for us to do a deep dive and understanding what are our true values, right? So if say loyalty is something that you value. So if you do something that can be perceived as a betrayal and you know that you've done it, even if nobody else knows that you've done it, then you're not going to feel good in yourself, and you are going to hate yourself, and you're not going to respect yourself. When you look in the mirror, you're not going to be able to, because you can fool everybody and you can lie to everybody about things, but at the end of the day, you know what you did and why you did it, more importantly. Because there's times that we do things that we didn't really mean to do, or we did it based on certain information that we had at the time, and then we kind of feel, I shouldn't have done that, shouldn't have said that, those kind of things. And being able to make amends for those kind of things is the path to freedom, to happiness. But when we do things that are out of alignment of our character, of who we know our best self is, and we repeat those patterns, sooner or later we'll find that we can't look ourselves in the eye. We cannot like the reflection that we see reflecting back to us. And so there were some things when I was in my early stage of recovery that I wasn't acting in alignment with who I was. I was out drinking and partying with the guys, and ended up being promiscuous a few times, and that was not who I wanted to be. That's not who I saw myself. And when I kind of got myself in a really bad situation, I was like, no, something's got to give here. I can't continue to behave like this. I cannot continue to live. And the whole reason I believe that happened for me, because up until that point, I believe that the sexual abuse and the trauma that I had experienced through childhood had zero effect on me. Why? Because I thought as long as I got good grades, I went to school, I was, I even had a part-time job, and at that time I was actually working full-time. And I was like, I'm the level-headed one. I am the one with the good head on her shoulders. How could I be having any of these kind of problems? It was way out of alignment with who I saw myself to be, who I wanted to be, who I saw my best version of myself as. And when I woke up to that fact, when I realized that maybe what I've been through has kind of caused me to kind of get into these situations that I didn't even really want to be in. I just didn't know how to set boundaries. And there was good reason for that. I had never been taught that I could say no to what was going on with my body. I did not know that. And you would think a young adult should know something like that, but I didn't. It's like I knew it intellectually, but I was too much of a people pleaser, and I was more worried about somebody else not liking me than what it felt like for me. Because growing up in the environment that I grew up in, when those kind of things happened, if I tried to push back or I tried to fight back in any way, there were severe consequences for it. So you learn to adapt as a survival mechanism. So if you find that you're doing things that you're not in alignment with, and a good indicator to tell whether or not it's in alignment with your values. If this stuff was all of a sudden put out on social media and everybody knew everything about you, how would you feel? That's how you know whether or not, because we all know at some level when we're doing things that are out of alignment of our character, of who we want to be. And we know that if those things were put out, then we would not feel good about ourselves. So starting to do the inner work, the healing work to align with that, how I started to do that was being able to admit when I was not in alignment and then go back and make amends for those kind of things. I would, when I found myself, I'm not perfect, I'm not a saint, so I'm sure there's somebody out there that could go, yeah, but Tina, I remember this one time that you did this and and yeah, sure, probably. But I am one of the first ones, and I ended up developing such a reputation that I'm one of the first ones to come running when I make a mistake. I will be the first one to say, yep, you know what, I did that. I own it, I made that mistake, and I know I shouldn't have, and this is what I've done to correct it, or this is what I'm going to do to correct it. Doing that holds you at such a high level of accountability that it's really uncomfortable to do that. It's painful to go back and say, yeah, you know what? I was a piece of shit. I didn't do this thing. I wasn't good. And being able to put that out there and admit that and take ownership for it, like we were talking about yesterday's topic was extreme ownership. By doing this, you take this on, and when you actually do it the first few times, it really, really sucks. It really sucks having to go back and go, yeah, I did these things and it's not good, and this is what I'm not doing in the future. So no matter what it is, but when you start to go down that path of healing, you become free of those burdens, and it also prevents you from adding more shit into the basket. Like, you don't keep doing the same things over and over again and wondering why. I remember hearing a speaker saying that they were really good at falling into a bucket of shit and coming out smelling like roses, until another friend of theirs had turned to them and said, you may want to question, why do you keep falling in that bucket of shit? Not the fact that you just keep coming out smelling like roses, why do you keep doing those things that cause you this kind of pain, this kind of turmoil? You spend all your time running around trying to deal with the consequences rather than taking the time and starting to deal with the inner work that's necessary to heal from your past. Because all of those behaviors where you're acting out of alignment of your best self are usually reactions and survival coping strategies that you learned that were effective at one time with growing up or in a different work environment or something like that, that you start behaving that way because that was effective at that particular time. So people pleasing was an effective coping strategy, a very effective survival skill for growing up in a home where there was a narcissistic sexual abuser that would punish and manipulate and pit my family against me if I did not comply with his wishes. And there'd be times where I'd fight and I just didn't care, and at least he left me alone, and he would be angry and I would put up with it. But then when I wasn't reacting to that kind of abuse, then he had to up the ante and he escalated things because he now couldn't get a reaction out of me. So then he ended up going to my mom and my brother, and he'd plant little seeds going, oh, she's such a moody bitch, and da 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 da, all these kind of things. And then they go, yeah, she is, like, look, she's so cranky all the time. There were reasons why I was cranky, but the problem is I started to believe these things because now it didn't just come from the abuser, it came from the two people that were my support system, my mom and my brother. And that's when that kind of stuff actually started to hurt. I didn't care. He could do whatever he wanted because I didn't care about him. He meant nothing to me, and he was just something that I was forced to tolerate. But when that betrayal, when that hurt, when that pain comes from the people that you actually care about, that's when it gets you, right? And so learning that when you are acting out of alignment, it's because of you've learned a certain way of coping with the pain, the trauma, the discomfort of life, whatever it is. We learn certain ways that, oh, this is actually effective. So whether you learn to cope through food, alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it is, all of those things they were effective at keeping you alive at that particular time. However, if you continue to repeat those patterns, then over time they become the problem, right? And it's sooner or later you're going to end up having to deal with the root cause. So at one point that external thing was the solution. It becomes a problem because you haven't dealt with the real problem of it, right? So that's like the Band-Aid solution. So, and we know at the end of the day, and I can tell you from having doing the hard work of facing these things and facing ourselves, and facing those dark parts of ourselves. So, goodness comes at a price, right? And I can tell you, having lived on both sides, it feels much better on this side, doing things that I know stay in alignment with my values. So making sure that I understand, if I say that I love someone, and I believe that love is for free and for fun, expecting nothing in return. Because if you truly, truly love someone, then you want what is best for them, even if it costs you. Always. So when you operate from that standpoint, there may be times where you will have to do things because you love them, and they perceive it as you're hurting them, right? And it becomes, like, example, I'm going to just give a simple example just to kind of illustrate this, of, like, you know, kids, they want their candies, they want sweets, they want whatever, right? But as a parent, you can't just let the kid eat candies and sweets all the time. You have to get them to eat vegetables and healthy food and stuff like that, right? Now, they may think you're the most evil person on the earth at that particular time, but you have to, if you love them as a child, you don't just let them eat whatever they want. You have to correct that behavior. You have to guide them into what is the right path, right? So the same thing happens whether you're in leadership, you're in business, even for ourselves. We have to start guiding ourselves into what we know the right behavior is and start living in alignment with that. And like I said, the good rule of thumb is if somebody else knew, like, so, and this is another thing, and we're all guilty of this. I've been guilty of this, where you have a frustrating day and then you just like bitch and you gossip, or you get together with that friend and you bitch about the other friend and they're like, yeah, I can't believe they friggin' did that, da, 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 da. It feels good in the moment. It's like it relieves the pressure in the moment, but at the same time, if that person was standing right behind you, you wouldn't say the shit that you've said, and because you'd feel like a dirtbag, right? So when you start operating in a way that that somebody's always watching, right? And for me, that started when I actually developed a spiritual connection, a personal connection with God. And even with that, I'm still not perfect. I'm susceptible to bitching and complaining just like everybody else, but I keep it down to a dull roar. I at least like to think that I do. So doing that allows you to know that you are now operating in alignment with who it is that you want to be. And this is really important when you're trying to make changes. So maybe you're trying to lose weight and you're trying to be healthy, and you know that in order to be a healthy person, you have to work out, yet you don't work out. Well, working towards that, even if you do it once a week at first or once a month, I don't care, whatever it is that you start working towards it, and it becomes something that you give yourself recognition for, you give yourself praise and respect for, going, yeah, I really did it, because you have to value the things that you are doing, the steps that you're taking to become in alignment with your best self, even if you're not quite there yet. So as long as you're moving in that right direction, giving yourself the credit for doing that, for taking that step. At least you weren't taking the step in the opposite direction and going deliberately acting out of alignment. So this takes a lot, and the more that you actually practice it and implement it, and when you screw up, revisit it and go, okay, how far out of alignment did I act today? Like, say maybe you want to be a leader that is, like think of somebody that you really admire and respect, and something bad hits the fan, and you look to that leader and they're just calm, cool, collected. They're like, yeah, no worries, man, we got this. And you're like, wow, like inside you're like freaking out going, oh my God, what's gonna go? What's gonna happen? All that kind of stuff. But you have an example that you look up to of somebody that is like, damn, they're just like calm. Inside, they're probably freaking out too, or maybe they're not, who knows? But on the outside, they look calm. And that inspires you to want to be that kind of same way, right? Or if you see somebody where, I remember, I think it was Marianne Williamson, I was listening to her on a talk, and she was talking about how she was giving a speech, and somebody had said something to try and get her goat kind of thing, right? Try and rile her up. And she made a really cool observation, was that people didn't look to the person that threw the stone. They looked to her to see how she would react. And I think I've seen this with Princess Di too. It's like, somebody had asked Princess Di, oh, where are your kids? And she's like, they're in school. And so it's like, if we react to the thing that is thrown at us, then it becomes everybody looks at us. But if we don't react and we act out of love, now the ownership falls squarely on the person that threw the stone, not on the person that received the stone. So I always remember that, and I try to practice that in my day-to-day life. It's not always easy, because sometimes when, you know, people throw those stones, it fucking hurts. And you're like, God damn, okay, now this is the real test. Can I truly act in alignment of coming from a place of love instead of fear, right? Because fear would be lashing back out and giving it just as good as you got it. And love is kind of like, you must be in a lot of fucking pain to do that, okay? And I'm not going to add to your pain. And that's how I try to operate. And because of that, I end up being a whole lot happier, because now I have no mess on my side of the street to clean up. I don't have to worry. My house is clean internally, inside. I can look in the mirror, I can look in my own eyes and know that I behaved in a way that I can respect. And at the end of the day, that is worth everything. When I know that I've done shit that I shouldn't have done, and I've hurt people that I shouldn't have, that is too heavy a weight to carry, and I refuse to do it. So this is why I always say, and I'm very diligent about this too, of there is no room for hate in my heart, because that is fear. And in order for me to hate something, I actually have to fear it. I have to think that it's a threat in some sort of way. If I don't think it's a threat, then it's, of course, come on in. Like, it's not a big deal, right? Now, that being said, I know there's people out there that sometimes you have to watch out, because there are real threats, right? And I'm not saying don't protect yourself. At the end of the day, you still have control over how you react. So you are allowed to protect yourself and keep yourself, the people that you love, from harm. Absolutely. So you can protect, but don't go out starting fights. Don't go out trying to pick fights with people, or give it as good as you got. As soon as you feel that, I'm going to show them, and you want to twist the knife, man, that kind of karma is way too expensive. I'm sorry, I won't do it, right? So, and when I think of hate too, hate is actually a learned, conditioned behavior. And when I think of this, it's like, have you ever seen a kid where they fall down and they get up and they're not sure if they should cry, but they look over at their parent and they look at their parent's reaction. And if their parent freaks out, they freak out. But if their parent's like, hey, you fell down, are you okay? And it just like, they're like, oh yeah, I'm good, right? So it's a conditioned, learned behavior. We do this all the time, right? So if you find that you do have hate in your heart, you do have this animosity, resentment, any of that kind of stuff, I encourage you to start looking at that and understanding, what is it that you are afraid of? And when you turn it that way and ask yourself those kind of questions, what are you afraid of? It's like, trying to think of an example. So say you hear somebody at work was talking shit about you, and it's that boss that doesn't like you and is always talking down to you. This happened a lot. And before, I used to get upset and I'd be afraid, and I'd be like, yeah, well, he did these things, and you get into that defensive kind of mode, or you just kind of get resentful or whatever, you get your back up. And I used to get that way until I started to look at, it's like, well, the only reason I'm getting defensive is, okay, he's in a position of authority and I'm afraid that I could lose my job because of him, kind of thing. When I acknowledge the fear and I'm like, well, he can't actually technically get rid of me just because he doesn't like me. He actually needs to have a reason of I didn't do my job, or I didn't do something, or he can make things difficult, but at the end of the day, I have a choice in how I respond. So he can choose to do all of those things. And there have been times where I've experienced that. And one of the ways that I can reduce the fear on that is like, hey, if they're picking on me, they're leaving somebody else alone. If they're spending all their time focusing on trying to take me out, they're leaving other people alone. And so that's how I would take the fear out of it. And I'm like, go ahead, hit, keep going, bring it. You know, because I will not react and I will not justify their behavior. And when I don't justify their behavior, it sits squarely on their own shoulders. I don't have to take that, right? If I do react in fear and I lash back out, then I take on their heavy burden, and I don't want to do that. So it's an energy exchange. So when you look at it from that perspective, you don't ever want to retaliate. And if everybody did that in the world and everybody operated from that kind of perspective, that you don't talk shit about people, you always believe the best in people, you always say kind things, you always lift somebody else up rather than squishing them down into the dirt, there would be no wars, there would be no fights, there would be no arguments, because we would all seek to understand and be understood. We would all be responsible for our own emotions and our own reactions, and therefore there'd be no backlash, no fighting, there would only be understanding, right? And love and kindness. And I don't know, to me that's a much better world. And it doesn't even take somebody else. Somebody else can absolutely hate your guts. They can hate you, every little bit of you. But if you are good within you, it can't touch you. It cannot touch you. The only time that stuff gets to us is if we agree with what it is that they are saying. When we agree, we take on whatever they're throwing at us. And when we just revel in that crap and we're like, oh yeah, I am a terrible person. Oh. And trust me, the last 2 years was me having to face all of that stuff inside that I was denying about myself, having to pull that stuff out and kind of go. I like to do these. So what if it's true? What if it's true then? What if, you know what? They're calling you fat, Tina. Well, I was 330 pounds. Yeah, I was pretty fat. And I'm still not skinny, but I'm less fat. So I am good. And even still, regardless of the number on the scale, what does that have to do with the quality of person that I am? It has absolutely nothing. But it sure in the hell says a lot about the quality of person that that person is. Right? There are a lot more destructive characteristics in the world than the size of your bank balance, the size of your wallet, or your body. There are so many more painful things. And I still don't judge people that behave in those bad ways, because I know that they're doing it out of an act of pain from themselves. There is either an expression of love or a cry for love. That's it. Everything is either an expression of love or a cry for love. And if they are crying for love, they need that attention, like my cat. And responding with love is the only thing that's real, the only thing that's valid. And so we can, just as we are conditioned to hate and learn not to like something because it's different from us and it doesn't look the same, so therefore it's a threat, therefore we are afraid. Hey, hello, AK14N, welcome. So being able to see that if we are in that hate, resentful, it's all just fear, and what are you afraid of? And I can promise you, most guys don't like to admit that they're afraid. So most women don't like to admit that they're afraid. They usually say, yeah, but I wouldn't have done that if they hadn't have done this. Well, I'm telling you, regardless of what somebody does or doesn't do to you, it only hurts you when you agree with it. And when we agree with it, it's because we have a fear within us that was probably conditioned from the past, whether that's the recent past or the far past. And we're seeing things through a filter of, just like I did in childhood, where it was beneficial for my abuser to, when I would fight back with him, when I would tell him not to touch me, that he would start getting my mom and my brother to point out little things of how Tina's a bitch. And so for my entire life, I compensated for that by trying to make sure that nobody could ever call me a bitch, right? And not realizing that that is all tied back to those situations where he was doing that as a way to control and manipulate me and to keep me more compliant so that I would do or let him do the things that he wanted. And then he would turn around and blame me for it. So there's whole other layers there. So, but this was all part of the narcissistic abuser's technique of deflecting, so he didn't have to take the ownership of what it was he was doing, because he knew he was wrong, he was living out of alignment. But that comes from a belief that he's already bad. So if you have that belief that you're already a bad person, then you feel justified doing bad things. So if you have the belief that you are a good person, that you have integrity, that you're trustworthy, that you're valuable, then you are going to act in alignment with those beliefs, those values. So it's important to make sure, for our ultimate happiness and the happiness of those around us, is that we are doing our best every day to live in alignment with our values, with our best self. And when we're not, that we go back and we make amends for it, because I can promise you, when you do that, it prevents you from doing it again. When you take that full extreme ownership of it, yeah, it really sucks. So it stops you. It stops you from doing that same shit over again. And this leads me into the next topic, which is forgiveness. And so even if we know that somebody has done something deliberately to us, I used to try and skip the steps to forgiveness. So forgiveness has a lot of the same steps as the grieving process. So first there's denial. No, this can't be happening. No way they said that about me. I can't believe that. And then there's anger, right? And then there is bargaining. Well, maybe if I hadn't have done this, then they wouldn't have said that thing. And then there's sadness, going, well, it still doesn't justify what they did. And then finally, the final stage is acceptance of knowing that it is what it is, and you can choose how you want to deal with that. Maybe you choose, hey, that was too far, and I don't want that person in my life anymore. You're well within your rights to decide that. You have the ability to say, you know what, I don't want that person in my life. However, before you cut them out, I would still try to approach from a perspective of love and give them the benefit of the doubt and call them out. But that means that you have to be vulnerable. You have to say, that actually friggin' hurt me. You really hurt me. And if they're anything of a good person, they're going to be like, if they can take ownership. Now, you might not have somebody who's able to take ownership. And there's some people, the reason they can't take that ownership is because of how far down, how far out of alignment they're operating. That's the only reason that you can't take ownership, because it's really easy to take ownership for something if you bump into somebody and you make them spill their coffee. They're like, oh shit, sorry man, I didn't mean to do that. it's easy to take ownership for that, because you wouldn't deliberately run into somebody and cause them to knock their coffee over. Well, maybe you would, I don't know. But let's assume that you don't. So it's easy to do that. But if you kept going and then you see that person again and you say nothing and you don't talk about it, that ickiness, it sits inside you and it just starts to fester. And you have to get that out of your system. And if you don't, hey, you can hang on to that. You can hang on to that poison, and guess what? It's gonna, anything else good that you put in your system, it's now gonna infect it. It's gonna taint everything within you. So this is why I say there is no room for hate in my heart. As soon as I detect that within myself, I have to purge that. I have to get it out. I cannot live with that in my system. I refuse to. So when we start changing our behavior in this way, and don't get me wrong, guys, this is not an easy process. It requires a lot of work, a lot of high-level integrity, and I'm not trying to come across holier than thou. I do it out of survival because I know what it feels like to let that stuff sit in you. I know what it feels like when I'm way out of alignment. This is so much easier, especially now that I've got that. You clean the inner house, you do the inner work, you clean that mess up. It now doesn't poison you, it has no control over you. And you are in full command and control over who you are and who you want to be. And you can choose, and be kind with yourself on the times that you forget. Give yourself forgiveness first so that you can give that to others when they fuck up. Because trust me, we all do. We all make mistakes, and it's okay. But speak your truth, speak it kindly, and on that note, I'm going to wrap up this session with one of my favorite poems. And I really like this because when I listen to these kind of poems or I read these, I actually take them to heart and I try to apply them as literally as possible in every aspect of my life. I just find it a really good way. It's a discipline, actually. Holy shit, I'm actually disciplined in something. Wow, who knew? But it's actually a discipline to hold yourself to these kind of standards, to hold yourself to these ideals. It's not always easy, and it's something, you miss the target and you kind of go, if I was measuring against this, I didn't do too well on that. So it's not about perfection, it's about progress, and it's about trying to keep yourself as aligned as possible without stressing yourself out, because that's no good. So this poem is called Desiderata. Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others. Even the dull and ignorant, they too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexatious to the spirit. If you compare yourself to others, you may become vain or bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself. Especially, do not feign affection. Neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all arity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune. Do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born out of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it's clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be. And whatever your labors and aspirations, in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace in your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful and strive to be happy. So guys, we're going to wrap up today's session. For those of you that have joined in, welcome. I will be posting this on my YouTube channel. You can catch the replay. Oh, Peter, thank you so much for the roses. So sweet. Thank you. You can check me out on the YouTube channel, Coach Tina B 125. You can see the replays there, and all the thumbnails on the videos are pieces of my artwork. And I do art therapy as a way of healing some of the past trauma. It helps me stay grounded, stay present, and it just brings a lot of joy to my life. There are links in the comments where if you wanted to order a print or a phone case or a skirt or a t-shirt, whatever it is, you can do that by clicking on those links, and it'll take you to Redbubble, and you can check out the different artwork that I do. So guys, thank you so much for coming out. I will be back again tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will see you tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye.